After an hour of arguments, the Supreme Court appeared to be divided. Here to talk about this and more is our political panel, founder and CEO of Americans United for Life, Catherine Glenn Foster, and Rachel Laser. Ladies, welcome. Thanks for being here. Let's just start with Schumer's comments before we get into the case itself. Schumer starts off literally threatening two Supreme Court justices. You heard the comments there. I don't think there's any other way that you can interpret this, saying that they're going to feel the results of this. I can't believe, just from my standpoint, the way that this was washed over. All of these organizations turning it back and saying that what was more outrageous was that John Roberts actually responded. That, to me, you threatened the life of two Supreme Court justices, and the media is more concerned about whether or not it was appropriate for the Chief Justice to respond or not. That in itself should be something that is the big issue of the day.
Absolutely. I was very impressed with the Chief Justice's leadership on this issue. When you have Senator Schumer literally threatening Supreme Court justices, potentially inciting violence against sitting Supreme Court justices, and trying to turn the Supreme Court into a political branch, all steps from steps from Representative Steve Scalise, who himself was attacked, was gunned down just recently by a political fanatic. It is reprehensible.
Rachel.
An opposing point of view, Sean, is that this is a distraction. This is a distraction from the bottom line here. Because what the Supreme Court is hearing is a case that's about reproductive freedom, about religious freedom, and about the rule of law. But really, it's a reflection. I mean, the way people are reacting to it, it's a reflection about what the environment is that this president has created, one where no one feels safe.
Right, and so let me just say this. I want to get into the case, and that's because that's why we have you both on. But I do think for all of the talk that these folks throw at the president, this tweet was inappropriate in this comment, I get it, and that's fine. We have plenty of time to talk about, and there has been plenty of criticism about what the president has done and said and tweeted. But here you actually have someone threatening the life of two people, and the excuse is, well, that's just the political environment. You can't be outraged at everything that Donald Trump says and does, and then not say, well, what Schumer did, that's just because of the sign of the times.
You know, it wasn't a threat to the lives, right? That wasn't the explicit language. I mean, what he meant was that he was afraid that there would be a severe political backlash, and actually not afraid, but predicting one, because what's at stake are things like reproductive freedom and religious freedom, which are two of the most important freedoms for self-determination that this country has, and so I think it's the way we're interpreting what he said. The political backlash that he was predicting is being interpreted as some kind of threat of violence, and that is happening because we have a president who's said demeaning things to women, thrown children in cages, talked about good people being on both sides in Charlottesville, where Jews and anti-Semitism, Jews were under attack and anti-Semitism was on full display. A very threatening environment where none of us feel safe.
So let's get into the case. But I just want to say, as somebody that stood at a podium for a while and had everyone talk about what Donald Trump did or didn't mean, people were pretty dead set. Well, this was a threat. That wasn't a threat. I get it, but it's interesting how when someone on the left makes a comment, it's here's what they really meant. But when Donald Trump says something, it's let's read into it and find the most horrible aspects of it. It's just, to me, it just continues to show. And I don't think any of it's right. I'm not saying that any of this is right. I'm just saying that it's to me, it's always excused on the left, and on the right, every bad intention is read into it. So that being said, let's kind of get into the case.
Obviously a hot topic, obviously gets people's emotions going. But let's talk a little bit about this law that's trying to get passed in Louisiana. If it does get passed, it requires doctors to have admitting privileges within 30 miles of the abortion clinic. Is it important for a doctor to have admitting privileges, and what does this mean? Break that down for us to understand. Is this important? Is it not?
Go ahead.
Absolutely. As a post-abortive woman myself, I know how important it is for women who have made the choice to have an abortion. If something goes wrong, and sometimes it does, from the abortion industry's own statistics, we know that dozens of women every year are likely transferred directly from the abortion facility to a hospital in Louisiana alone. These women need continuity of care, and this is something that the medical groups have repeatedly said is appropriate, is needed, is necessary, to use their word. Now, when it comes to the abortion context, suddenly things change. They will create carve-outs, and there's this abortion distortion that happens where they'll start to say, well, maybe in this context we don't need emergency transfer agreements. But overall, when you look at the abortion industry's own writings, own articles, they do say, and the medical community's own articles, they say that in fact there is a need for continuity of care, and that's all that Louisiana is trying to do to prevent Gosnell type situations, as we saw in Philadelphia a few years ago, where the grand jury, which was nonpartisan, said we need to ensure that abortion facilities are held to the same standards, are not free from regulatory review. And so that's what Louisiana has done here. They are using their regulations, their law. When you were talking about political backlash, that's exactly where this should be. Not in the courts, but in the political process, in the legislatures, where in the state houses, lawmakers can really examine the truth, the facts, and find out what is going to most help women in abortion situations.
Rachel, it looks like you want to say something.
Yeah. I was going to say, my guess is that.
You asked, whether women's health is at risk here, and that's really what the district court's job is in this country. It's to really scrutinize the record and determine, what are the risks here and what are the burdens here. And what they found was that there wasn't a benefit to this regulation, and instead that it put a substantial burden in the way of women seeking reproductive health care, in this country. And that's what the bottom line is about this case. This case is about whether women can have the right to make decisions about their health care, about their birth control, about their number of children that they want to have in their lives. And it's also about religious freedom. I run a religious freedom organization, Americans United for Separation of Church and State. And attacks on reproductive freedom are attacks on religious freedom, because we're all allowed in this country, we all have the freedom to live as our true selves and to be treated equally by our government, no matter what our belief system, or even if we don't believe. That's the first 16 words of our First Amendment. I'm Jewish, right? And in the Jewish tradition, there are certain instances where by my Jewish law, I am obligated to have an abortion, like where my life is at risk. So in this country, the question is, who should be making decisions? Should it be politicians? Should it be religious leaders? Should it be women? I trust women to make those decisions.
So real quick, we don't have a lot of time left. Just explain to me, because I don't get this, why can't an ambulance, something went wrong, like if you had a midwife that you were being pregnant, you'd call an ambulance, right? Why can't, instead of having admitting privileges, you couldn't just call an ambulance?
You can call an ambulance, but what's at stake here is how long the woman may have to wait at the hospital before she gets the emergency care that she needs. Women deserve emergency care when an abortion goes wrong. The abortion has already happened, so that is off the table. But when something goes wrong, doctors need to be able to take every medical intervention to try to save her fertility, even her life. This is a life or death matter for women in Louisiana and women nationwide. So if there is a possibility that we can get one woman more, a dozen women more every year directly into an OR type environment where they can work to repair a perforated uterus, a perforated bowel, whatever may be the case, then that is what we must do.
Thank you,
And I'll
Catherine
just
and
say that
Rachel. We
women-
got to wrap here,
Yeah,
but
okay.
thank you so much
just
for
wanted to add
talking
just
about
one last
women's
thing,
health.
if I could. Just that women really can always go to the hospital, and obviously that's very important to me and to the pro-choice movement as well. So thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Well, coming up, we'll chat with White House Communications Director Stephanie Grisham.
We'll tell you what really happens behind the scenes when dealing with the media. Stay tuned.